What are the best budget Yu-Gi-Oh decks right now? Big dog, I have comprised a tier list of some of the most popular and most played budget Yu-Gi-Oh decks. And we're going to be determining if they're top budget or if Noodles is a better budget. I don't know about you, but to me, the chili is the best, hands down. Of course, big dog, if you want to see more videos like this, you already know what to do. Destroy that subscribe button, like and comment, and also if you're feeling extra, buy the merch. Without further ado, let's jump on in. All right, big dog, so the criteria for this budget tier list is incredibly simple. I will be ranking these strategies not only on how powerful they are, but I also will be taking into consideration that if you put more money into the strategy, will it actually be stronger? I'll also consider the potential of these strategies getting future support, and I'll talk about that as I go through them. Let's go ahead and start off with the deck of the hour, Majispecters. Majispecters just got Unicorn Kieran off of the ban list to limit. And I ain't no psychic, but I'm gonna say in a couple of months, the card's gonna be at 3. There's actually a reason why the card is going to be at 3, and it's simply because Majispecters are not strong enough. This is a Pendulum Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that defeats the purpose of being a Pendulum Yu-Gi-Oh strategy. It doesn't even have 2 effects. My boy, that card text is short. What you doing with no effects in that Pendulum text? On top of that, with cards like Infinite Impermanence, Effect Veiler, and Ghostmourner, being able to stop the Majispecter Link monster means GG's. And those cards are played at maximum right now. I think that Majispecters takes a really good pilot. This is a strategy that's not completely terrible. It can be mixed with other pendulum-based strategies, which has always been a plus, but at the end of the day, it is a pendulum-based strategy. It's going to require more brain than you probably want to commit to play this deck. Plunder Patrol. This strategy just got a top 16 placing at YCS Raleigh. Bro, I said Raleigh right. I will fight every North, South, East, and West Carolinian if you guys say I got it wrong. There are almost some things that are assured in Yu-Gi-Oh! Death, taxes, and a runic strategy being able to top. I do think that the Plunder Patrol version of this deck is a solid choice. Ironically, in the meta, it's a lot of fire, dark, and light Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies, which means that Plunder Patrol can summon its best cards: Mork, Liss, and Brawn. A lot of people don't consider Brawn a powerful Plunder Patrol card, but a lot of people sleep on back row removal. And Brawn makes all of your Plunder Patrols beefy, as well as the runic strategy being able to help you supplement with that. I really don't think that it's much of a fluke. I think Plunder Patrol is a solid budget Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. Now, the Sarcophagus strategy. I ain't gonna lie, chat. I was wrong. In my last tier list where I talked about the Sarcophagus strategy and its meta implications, I said that the deck was cheeks. Doo-doo water. But for a budget Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck, because all of the Sarcophagus cards are completely plummeting, I'm actually gonna say it takes a really good pilot. Maybe I'm giving it pity points. Sarcophagus is working with the gods. When you gotta play cards like the Gadgets and the Silent Swordsmans and Magician cards, you work it. But coolly enough, the Sarcophagus strategy is an amazing going second Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy, with its boss monster Gandora being able to wipe the whole board and allowing you to go for game. I think in the right player's hands, this deck can do well at a local level. And with the nostalgia kicking in, this strategy may fill some boomer's brain and they may top a regional with it. Just maybe. It ain't gonna be me though. I ain't gonna lie, it might be me. The deck look kind of fire. Ninjas! Okay, so this one means like black person. This sign, this ain't a gang sign, at least I don't think. As one of the few people that have received an invite with ninjas, which is probably the highest honor that the strategy will ever get. Ninjas are on troubling times. The deck does show potential to brick. It also needs multiple functions to be able to do well, but there's a couple of benefits that work in Ninja's favor. 1, Boral and Baron are banned. That is huge. That means that the book cards are a lot stronger. 2, not a lot of strategies do exactly what ninjas do, meaning that this deck is incredibly hard to counter. I think that ninjas take a really good pilot, and I would say right now, it's the strongest takes a good pilot deck. Ninjas have a unique perspective, flipping monsters face down and preventing them from being flipped face up, meaning that your opponent can't use those for important link summons. Ironically, Ninjas has a pretty decent Snake Eyes matchup, though I would not count on it past the local level. Altergeist. The reason why I put Altergeist in this budget tier list is because I understand that there are a lot of Master Duel players that may be looking to jump into the TCG and wonder where to start. Altergeist just came out in Master Duel, and players are probably wondering where exactly would I rank it in the TCG. It does have things like Secret Village of the Spellcasters to lock out your opponent's spell cards, and it also has 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity in the TCG, making it more consistent. Yep, nope, go ahead and get those noodles, big dog. I will admit that if we had a $20 budget, this is probably the best deck of all time. But seeing that the rent's not due right now and we can splurge, I'm gonna say noodles are a better investment. We gonna need that for when we get to some of these other decks. Altergeist isn't a terrible Yu-Gi-Oh strategy, but unfortunately, there are better Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that does this deck's gimmick. And if preventing the opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh is your gimmick, then you may want to consider Floowandereeze. There's really no need for introduction for Floowandereeze. This is still a top budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. I have no idea why this strategy keeps getting indirect support. And Phantom Nightmare, it was Swallow's Crowry, whatever, it made it more consistent. And just recently, the ban list got rid of powerful cards that would make this deck harder at going second. It keeps getting better. This is probably one of the best strategies in the room if you don't want friends, or if you think that pigeons work for the CIA. They might. Lightsworns are technically cheap. Now, I had to try to slide this one in because there's still expensive cards like Bestial Dispatter, but I'm pretty sure players will be willing to stretch out for that, especially if they get to build Lightsworn. The deck is around that $100 criteria. Lightsworn also has a ton of upside. This strategy can get stronger the more money you put into it. As far as it getting future support, the last time we got support for this strategy was 9 years ago, so don't count on any support anytime soon. I still think that Lightsworn is a solid choice. Technically, you can consider cards like Starleaf safer in the Chaos cards, as well as the Bestial monster support for Lightsworn. And since the deck is now an incredibly consistent mill deck, being able to summon Judgment Dragon to white boards, let's go back to Edison, baby. Goblin Biker. Every time I see Goblin Biker, I have to face that I was completely wrong about this deck. Through weeks and weeks of testing, I realized that Goblin Biker engine isn't just strong enough. I would still say borderline though. Goblin Biker is almost like Altergeist. The deck is incredibly cheap. And to be honest, it's almost scary cheap considering that this deck has a few secret rares. The deck is also a part of the Snake Eyes lore, so it's bound to get some meaningful support in the future, right? It's not Sword Soul. I think that the deck has enough to be able to consider it a decent budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck, but not enough to be considered as one of the greater budget Yu-Gi-Oh decks. Dinomorphia. Dinomorphia is like Floowandereeze, except people might actually like you for playing this deck. I don't know why, because it's still set 5 trap cards pass, but hey, Kentragina looks really cool. Everybody knows that Skill Drain is probably the last best remaining floodgate, and Dinomorphia Rexstrum is not only a skill drain, it's also a monster that can reduce your opponent's monster's attacks, making it like a skill drain and like Mirror Wall or something like that. I don't know. This deck is incredibly cool, and anytime we get more good trap cards, especially ones that have their life points, Dinomorphia has its claws all over it. Flame Swordsman. Bro, Joey must be proud that he on this tier list, G. Flame Swordsman is closer to modern Yu-Gi-Oh than you may want to give it credit. It has a ton of 1-card combos and plenty of room for you to play disruptive cards. All of the hand traps you want, catch Terra Fenrir. The only problem with Flame Swordsman is that its 1-card combos pale no comparison to cards like Snake Eyes Ash. I still think that it's a borderline Yu-Gi-Oh deck. It's pretty damn good. Like Goblin Biker, the deck isn't necessarily strong enough to be considered one of the greats, but does its own thing in its unique way. Also, anytime we get fire and warrior support, the deck is always looking to be able to get stronger. Sword Soul. We were just talking about this deck. Now, this may be incredibly bold, guys, but Sword Soul has not received any meaningful support since Burst of Destiny. If you guys didn't know, that's when Sword Soul made his debut. The deck has been the exact same thing. And to be honest, it's incredibly power-crept by now. Sword Soul needing multiple cards to be able to combo, and it not even being one of the better hand-trap decks anymore, I think it drops from solid choice to borderline as well. The good thing about this deck is that Arch Nemesis Protos is still a monstrous card. You can lock out your opponent's monsters. So can all of these other decks ironically play Arch Nemesis Protos, so that's not really a plus that this deck has that other strategies don't. I think Sword Soul is in desperate need of support, and with no Albaz support in sight, it's unlikely that we're gonna get it. In my last tier list, I talked about how Ragnara was not a good deck, and you guys complained.
Golly, there's multiple ways to play Ragnaraka. My deck's broken.
Well, in this tier list, we're gonna be talking about the different builds. Starting off with Ragnaraka Traptrix. Ragnaraka Traptrix does get a little bit more interesting. Since Traptrix are already insect and plants, the Ragnarakas kind of fill in for the reptiles while also providing you more support for bigger combos. The problem is, that's not what Traptrix needed. Traptrix needed a way to be able to go second consistently. Even with Baron and Borreload Savage being banned, I would still say at best that the deck is borderline. I'm not even sure if the Ragnaraka cards genuinely help the Traptrix as it would help some of these other strategies. You might just be better off playing pure Traptrix. I've been talking about Melodious a lot, and it's simply because it is a top budget Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Melodious has everything that you would want in a modern Yu-Gi-Oh deck. One card combos, tons of space for hand traps, and the ability to be able to recover. I love that this strategy can be mixed as an engine or played as a pure build. If you are playing Melodious, consider picking up Voiceless Voice cards if you get a bigger budget. Melodious Voiceless Voice is kind of ridiculous. Virtual World, this may be copium, I ain't go cap, but you gotta hear me out. Lots of Yu-Gi-Oh strategies are playing hand traps. Like we said before, Infinite Impermanence, Effect Veiler, Ghost Mourner. Yeah, that doesn't do anything against this deck. Virtual World's one of those strategies that doesn't care about hand traps. And since players are upping their count to hand traps, playing 20, making half of your opponent's deck useless feels like a good thing. Also, Virtual World just keeps on getting secret support. Evilzora Lars, anyone? Anytime they make a rank 6 or a rank 9, it's technically Virtual World support. I think because of QB Shinshin being able to banish everything on the field, which is really good against so many strategies, it's a reason why they're playing Dimension Fissure. I'm gonna say it's a solid choice. Virtual World's time to shine might be right now. This deck can be inconsistent, so I want to give you a disclaimer, but when this deck is on, it's on. It's a very good, very incredibly cheap budget deck. What is it, like $20? I'm just saying, I could take my girl on a McDonald's date and get one burger, or I can play Virtual World. I'm probably playing Virtual World. Sharks. I thought that the Full Armor XC cards would be good for Sharks, and let's not lie, they are. But unfortunately, they're almost better for decks like Goblin Biker. In my opinion, that puts Sharks back to square one and has a couple of great things going for it, but it doesn't do the great things going for it better than some other strategies. I'm gonna put it in takes a good parlay. I don't have the heart to put this deck in Noodles or a better investment, because that would be like saying that Altergeist and Sharks are on the same playing field. And we both know that that is not close to being true. The Master of Faster, the Kings of Disaster. This is one of the few strategies with an Omni Negation card and Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Did I say that right? Bro, there's so many of them, I can't even keep up their names. Daquan, Rayshawn, Rayvon, it doesn't even matter. Red Dragon Archfiend does follow the line of what Yu-Gi-Oh was trying to do. One card combos, tons of room for interruption. I would say at the very worst, this deck is borderline. Another incredibly cheap Yu-Gi-Oh deck that's only drawback is its restrictions. If Red Dragon Archfiend didn't lock you into Dark Dragon, maybe if it locked you just into Darks, or maybe even just Dragons, the deck would have been crazy. And that's the type of balancing that I expect for Konami to do to every Yu-Gi-Oh strategy. But somehow, they managed to fumble the bag. Blackwings. Funnily enough, Blackwings have the same problem as Red Dragon Archfiend. The deck is really good, but Konami decided to impose restrictions on this strategy that they should have imposed on every strategy. Crow and Jack Atlas's decks are probably some of the best 5D's decks of all time, and Blackwings don't disappoint. At worst, it's a borderline Yu-Gi-Oh strategy. What I like about both of these strategies is that they're incredibly similar. Lots of cool combos, both play Bestials, synchro into some really powerful cards, excellent recovery, though I would say that Red Dragon Archfiend is a little bit stronger because it has one card combos when Blackwings typically need two. Ghoti! Konami, I hate that you guys called it Ghoti instead of Fish. You guys are so out of touch with the world. Ghoti has been getting its high praises lately. It's a deck that can play Dimension Shifter. And the new card, Fishborg Harpooner, does fix this strategy's problem at being able to easily summon level 6s. And while the next set may be Infinite Forbidden, the set after is named Rise of the Abyss or something like that. We know that's water support for all the boomers. I think that this deck has an incredible ceiling. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in solid choice. Ghoti has an uncanny ability to be able to play on your opponent's turn. Who am I lying? That's what every deck does now. But the strategy that works around banishing, where half of the decks in the game do nothing but banish your cards, I think that Ghoti has solidly positioned itself to be one of the cheap, better Yu-Gi-Oh decks in the game. And Exo Stepsisters have came a long way from that dryer. Hey Stepsis, I got some noodles. You trying to trade for You trying to trade? In a graveyard reliant format where Exosister can play Dimension Shifter and take advantage of those graveyard reliant decks, I think that it's solid. Once players realize that Nibiru the Primal Being isn't a great Yu-Gi-Oh card and they start to play it a lot less, this deck may be a top budget deck. But for now, solid is where it goes. It's worth its price point. I don't think that there will be any new future support, but it's decently strong. Exosister Martha single-handedly took this deck from absolutely nothing to a pretty decent budget Yu-Gi-Oh strategy. You can only imagine what another Exosister card would do. Dark World. Yeah, bro, I'm gonna go ahead and head on out. At least they got cookies. Dark World, unfortunately, is one of the most massive disappointments in recent Yu-Gi-Oh history. 0 wins, 0 tops, 0 pretty much of everything. The deck is incredibly gimmicky, and even with Droll and Lockbird not being played in the deck, it just doesn't do enough to be able to secure games at a high level event. Some more Dark World support may come out in maybe like 10 years or so. Now, Marincess is a deck that just keeps getting better. Its counterpart, Solomon Great, is way too expensive because Solomon Great Raging Phoenix, and Marincess has managed to keep its price fairly low. There are cards like Abyss Shark that you may want to consider, but ultimately, this was the strategy that I was saying is almost like a better Shark deck. It can summon monsters like Stealth Kraken and Totally Awesome easily, and can still do the 1-card combos while retaining a ton of hand interruptions. I think Marincess is easily one of the top budget decks, hands down, no debate. It's one of the few water decks that can quench out Fire's thirst. Skull Servant got support in Lightsworn. Bro, no, no, not good enough right now. And if I had to put another deck in the top budget, it's easily Heroes. While I didn't get any direct support from Legacy of Destruction, it's actually a really crazy deck. The 3rd copy of Destiny Hero Malicious ensures that you can draw 2 copies of Destiny Hero Malicious and get outskilled. But I think one of the biggest things that happened for Heroes is the loss of Baron and Borreload Savage Dragon, meaning the deck doesn't have to deal with Omni Negates. It's really good in this particular scenario, and since it does have a one-sided dimensional shifter, other decks will suffer. Crystal Beast. Bro, I think Crystal Beast may be the worst strategy on this tier list. Bro, if you're not Neshi, don't try it. And I don't even think Neshi trying it. Crystal Beast best monsters are Baguska and Necro Valley. Any deck can make that now. All right, let's go ahead and talk about them now. There are 2 particular strategies of Ragnaraka you guys have been wanting me to talk about. Aliens and Ogdiotic. I am never going to say that deck's name right. The Alien version focuses on making a Baguska-like monster with Cosmic EL, the Link 3 monster, and also can snatch your opponent's cards. And the Ogdiotic version focuses on making big boards. Cool. My honest to God, genuine thoughts on both of those strategies. Investing into Ogdiotic or Aliens. Now, I want to go out to say that I think Ragnaraka itself is fine. Reptiles and insects are incredibly underexplored right now, and plants are just starting to hit their stride. I think Ragnaraka itself has a ton of potential, but for right now, these decks would probably be the best noodles or better investment decks. There is no way I am going to invest into an Alien or Ogdiotic deck. Just not happening. These decks are not powerful enough. Their inboards, cheeks. Their requirements, cheeks. Bro, everything about them is cheeks. I think that these strategies will severely underperform is because these archetypes were never meant to be competitive. And that's fine. Not every Yu-Gi-Oh archetype is meant to be competitive. Some of them are meant to be fun. And that's what I think about those 2. Now, both Valmonica and Memento did get support in Legacy of Destruction. I think the support is but the support that they get in Infinite Forbidden makes the decks a lot stronger. I would say both of them were and takes a really good pilot based on their future. I think that the support coming up in the future is very promising for these 2 strategies, but Konami, can we please get more Vanquish Soul support? Can we get another wave of that? Every other strategy has had 2 waves at least. Maybe they're scared of Vanquish Soul taking over the game. I see it. Gold Pride Punk. I think that Gold Pride Punk's new support is crazy good. In the essence of that Synchro monster is really good, bro. And their new main monster, technically Earth Machine support. You know how I feel about that, baby. Overall, though, I think that this strategy is borderline. Gold Pride Punk has all of the tools to be a deck that is good enough to be able to compete, but unfortunately falls short because of a lot of restrictions. And the biggest restriction being this deck not being able to play into interruptions very well. Now, Thunder Dragon is probably one of the biggest disappointments in most players' eyes. I think that Thunder Dragon was really hyped because Colossus seems like an incredible card, but when you start to break it down and you look at Master Duel and OCG, you realize that those decks don't even try to make Colossus. Why? Because it's too easy to counter. And if you're playing a more pure or chaos version of Thunder Dragon, you realize that after they out Thunder Dragon Colossus, that your deck is Thunder Dragon. I don't think Noodles are a better investment, but I do think that this strategy takes a really good pilot. And lastly is my boy Raid Raptors, the double R's, my boy. Raid Raptors is still a solid choice Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Anytime you can make Rising Rebellion Ultimate Raid Raptor, you probably win the game. The problem is being able to make that card. Sometimes you got a big brain and play through interruptions, but this deck does have enough unfair cards to be able to consistently win. And that's all that I got from my budget tier list. I really want to know, what do you guys think? Is there something I got too high or too low? Let me know down below. I can't wait to see what you have to say. Check out these other videos.